watching CIOTV by Enterprise IT World, a production of Accent Info Media.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now please do join me to welcome Mr. Mohamed Ameer from Exotel. Join me everybody to welcome him. Regional Business Head. Join me to welcome Mr. Mohamed Ameer.
Thank you. I was a little late. Right. So before we start, thank you everyone who's here. They say time is the most precious thing that you can give somebody. Thank you for giving it to us. I'll try to make things interesting for next 10 minutes as much as I can. There's something which I picked up with Mr. Jai Kumar's presentation, which happened right before the previous one. He told CIOs are becoming more CEOs. That's a very interesting observation. The question is, why is that happening? So we'll try and cover that as well. But before we start, I just want to do one activity. All of us interact on a daily basis with our friends, relatives, spouse, children, businesses. Now just think about it. Let's say in last 30 days, which is a very good conversation that you would have had. Just think about it in your mind. One conversation that like you think of when you say it's a good conversation which I've had. I'll give a moment. Okay. So just lift your hand if you think that one good conversation happened with spouse. Okay. 4, 5. If it happens with parents or children. Few. How about friends? Friends are a lot more. How about businesses? Have you had a good conversation with a business in last 1 hand, 2, 3? Okay, just an observation. Most of the hands which went up, which were for friends. So everybody, most of you agree that the good conversation happens with friends. Now the question is, why is that conversation good? Exactly, no one holds back. That's a very good point. Anything else? Exactly. So this is something that we were thinking in Exotel, and there are about 800 people thinking about why conversation happens, how do you quantify a good conversation, and what you can do to make it better. So with most of the friends, if you kind of try to quantify them, there are 3 things that is there for which the conversation happens. Of course, there's an emotion attached to it. People know each other. You have been friends from college days, school days, or working somewhere together. So people understand how do you feel and how do you react. So emotion is one part of it. Okay. The second part of it is you know exactly why a friend comes to you and having a conversation, you know why is he having this conversation? What is his intent? And the third thing is, what is the state at which he's having the conversation? These are the 3 most important things for which the conversation to happen. Now, you can have this conversation on a good topic or a bad topic, but for a good conversation to happen, these 3 kinds of stands out as a base things on which the conversation happens. Now, there were a few people who lifted their hands on business. Now, if you look at in general, most of the businesses we interact today, it could be, I have an issue with my, say, SIM card or bank account, or somebody calling me to try and sell something. So if you look at this conversation, the context part is missing. Yeah? So this is one example of that. So let's say this is a conversation between, okay. This is a conversation between a customer who's trying to make a payment and he's failing multiple times. So what does he do next? He or she calls up the customer service, and would have seen, everybody would have experienced that. You are greeted with a welcome, ask you to select a language. Once you select a language, it will ask you, why are you calling? And once you select, why are you calling? Then they try to help. And this is a typical how a conversation flows. But if we inject a context into this, that means the person on the other end knows beforehand why this person is calling. I know the intent of this person who's calling me. I know at what emotional state he's in. Is he emotionally charged or not? Or I also know what does he want to get out of this conversation. Then I can make it very simple. A conversation would look something like this, where somebody picks up the phone and says, hey, I know you are trying to make the payment. It has failed multiple times. Apologies, here is the link, go ahead and make the payment. And what are you trying to achieve with that? Your customer is happy, his problem is resolved. The first thing you think of is calling a customer care is, you need to spend that 10-15 minutes waiting to be connected. Now this could be automated. The second part of it is, I'm not using up my agent resources in just trying to identify what is the problem. That's something that we do beforehand. This is the power of context, and this is what AI is today able to do, which would not have been possible, let's say, 6-8 months back. Yeah, so these are some of the advantages of having a context, or roughly think in your mind that when is there somebody who can tell you what exactly is happening, why is this call is happening, why is somebody calling, your conversation quality goes up, your agent productivity goes up, which is like a call would have lasted 3.5 minutes, which is generally an AHT acceptable in this part of the world. Now that you can bring down substantially the AHT of it, that means I don't need to spend a lot of resources to do the job. Of course, your satisfaction goes up. One of the primary point that anybody measures is NPS. That goes up, which brings down your total cost of service. The second thing that I want to talk about is, so we do a bunch of things in AI at Exotel. Of course, you would have seen various voice bots, chat bots that are implemented. However, I want to talk about one specific thing which I think the businesses should start thinking about it. Now imagine any industry, you take an airline or you take a bank or any industry, what is the first thing that happens? You want to build a product or you want to do, basically some kind of a service to them which you are providing. The best thing is to ask the customer what do they want. And today these are done through NPS surveys. So you would get surveys or you would be sending surveys. I think most of the CIOs knows this. When I send 100 emailers or WhatsApp messages asking for a feedback, I get a response of 4 to 5%. Now, the people who are responding, the 4 to 5% are the people who are either very unhappy with you and they want to vent out their frustration by giving negative feedback to you, or somebody who's very happy and want to give you feedback. The 95% of it are not responding. And today, there are business decisions that are being taken, which is primarily dependent on this small subset of conversations that are happening or feedbacks that people are getting. Now, imagine this, that you have a super smart gentleman with you, that AI. Now, I would, instead of going me and asking, how do you feel about my service after I deliver the service, I use all the conversations about you. I derive state, intent, and vibe from all the conversation. I'll understand why this conversation happened, what was the intent of this conversation to happen, what was the emotion of the customer during the conversation. Now, I use all this data and then I try to understand what do my customer actually feel about us, what are the areas or services that we need to improve on. And this is exactly where the point of CIOs getting more powerful comes up. Data is basically the next oil. You have tons of data of your customer within the organization in terms of CDP, in terms of customer conversation. Simply run through an AI which will try and get you information about the conversation that is happening. And there are 3 layers that you can do. One is your operational KPI. Are my people performing the way they are supposed to perform? If somebody is coming with a problem, are we able to solve the problem? Are we able to solve it within the time? If we are trying to sell a product, are we giving the right information in the right way? The operational KPI take care of that. You basically run everything through a single platform, create a persona which says, this is an identical, or this is how my best sales guy or best customer service guy looks like, and then kind of measure the long tail based on the parameters that you come across. That's on an operational perspective. Now, there's also process level KPI. I think the most important thing a CEO will ask is, how can I even reduce this conversations happening? Why did this call even come in? How can I reduce the call? Or you will be able to answer that by understanding at a process level KPIs, why these calls are happening. Is there a gap in my service or a product or my process that needs to be fixed? Imagine a dashboard which says, I have my currently customer service or customer satisfaction rate is, say, 70%. These are the top 5 problems customers are talking about across all the conversation that has been measured. Now you pick top 2 and solve it and see if this graph goes up. That's the amount of detailing that can be done by just understanding from the conversation. Of course, at a strategic level, what are the next products needs to be built? If I am a bank and I'm launching credit card, what features or functions my next card has to be? Today, this is purely done on NPS surveys. Now I can understand this, understand all the customer conversation, and I can come out with more data-centric approach on understanding this in terms of strategic level. Yeah. So the last thing that I want to cover is the future in AI in the customer experience space will be autonomous contact center. We are already seeing this happening in some part of the world where the conversations, all this that's happening today, call comes, an IVR flows, an agent tries to understand the problem. All this kind of gonna get redundant, and the AI will be able to have some of this conversation today. To do that, the very first step is what we call it as an agent assist. The least that you can do today is use all the information and says, this specific person is calling, this is the problem, this is how you need to solve, and you do that in, say, less than 30 seconds. How can you close the call? How can you solve his problem? And give out all the information that is needed to do that. Let's say this specific person likes to have a detailed conversation, but however, he just wants this point, yes or no. So you can make the conversation hyper-personalized with agent assist. That should be the first step towards autonomous. The second step would be where some of this conversation AI takes up, and the human becomes a supervisor and measures how the AI is performing before eventually, which is going to take 12 to 36 months, where the entire conversations could be managed by automatically on the contact center space. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.